there when we get there.
Why do men work so hard to get you? And then when you finally get them a chance, they won't put in the work to keep you.
Oh, sometimes it don't be there when we get there.
Damn.
Yeah, no, I'm tired of not leaving Yelp reviews, bro. Y'all need to stop going quietly on some cool. Like, I'm not saying this about every woman. I'm not saying it's a majority. I'm not saying none of that. Matter of fact, I'm not saying it's the woman at all. Perhaps I did everything that I did. I pursued you, and once we got into an intimate enough environment, we realized this is where we should stop. We don't belong anywhere closer to each other than what we've gotten so far. As a matter of fact, this is the perfect time for us to get off the boat without crashing.
Why do men work so hard to get you? And then when you finally get them a chance, they won't put in the work to keep you.
Oh, sometimes it don't be there when we get there.
Damn.
Yeah, no, I'm tired of not leaving Yelp reviews, bro. Y'all need to stop going quietly on some cool. Like, I'm not saying this about every woman. I'm not saying it's a majority. I'm not saying none of that. Matter of fact, I'm not saying it's the woman at all. Perhaps I did everything that I did. I pursued you, and once we got into an intimate enough environment, we realized this is where we should stop. We don't belong anywhere closer to each other than what we've gotten so far. As a matter of fact, this is the perfect time for us to get off the boat without crashing.
Martin Luther King Jr. Wonderwall type beat for Gerby. Someone sent this in. Let's see what's going on.
One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers.
Look. Snatching up babies, I'm a domestic terrorist. You got no host, you must feel embarrassed. You thought I took an L, that's the Mandela effect. Like the Berenstain Bears. I got too much self-worth. These hoes can't reach me, they can't climb the stairs. I just ran over a family whipping in the McLaren.
Okay. You know, these freestyles are starting to get kind of fire, if I do say so myself. I should start charging people to send in these beats, have them promote. Does this guy want... No, that was probably just a joke. This guy didn't put any links for me to shout out or anything. I'll continue the charity. Send in your beats. Gerby will send in that hot heat, and the twink will spit his flames over it, and it'll be a good thing. What someone needs to do, because I don't really want to do it, is just take the freestyles and put them on TikTok or make shorts out of it or something. Because every time someone messages me about making shorts or like short form content, it's always just an out of context clip from one of my main channel videos, and it doesn't really work as a short form. But if you just put these freestyles up, I feel like that would work. And also it'd be no context, so people would think it's like a 14-year-old rapper from Atlanta trying to make it, and that's funnier. So you should do that. Don't even shout me out, just put them up. Question. Someone sent in a question. I gotta make this way bigger. This is long. Gotta read all this. I can't read. Hey, Gerby Derb. I have a question that I'm curious what your response is. I watch mostly your Deep Thought channel, and even though the titles seem to be directed towards dudes, as a girl I still find consolation in watching your videos, especially when you talked about how hookup culture isn't even as cool as it seems, because after being part of it I agree. However, my question is actually about staying in touch with friends. I'm a freshman in community college, and in the area I grew up in, so I'm still in my comfort zone in a sense. Meaning I don't have an overwhelming urge to meet new people yet, because I still know people in the area. But still, as a girl, you'd be surprised how difficult it is to make friends. Girls don't even seem interested in talking. It's so weird. And not to be conceited, but I've been fortunate to have things easier when approaching people just because of my approachable looks. However, in these cases, it seems like looks don't even matter. Girls seem judgmental, and when I try to break this impression, it seems like I was right in the first place. Dudes just seem easier to talk to, in my opinion. Now, this is a question that I would like to hear your thoughts on. I understand that my friends have a new life going to university in the same area, and I've been busy trying to build good, sustainable habits for myself, not in the sorority scene. So, in a sense, I create my isolation because of the time I'm putting in myself. But when I have free time, I reach out. It takes days for them to respond. These are friends that are from different groups, so they don't really talk much to each other. But if they're all taking forever to respond, am I the problem? I would appreciate honesty from them, but I feel like I'm always the one reaching out. I'm not sure if I'm being irrational. It's easy to be stuck in a lonely view of the world, but I'm trying to be more optimistic. I think in one of your videos you mentioned how you don't need relationships for happiness, or maybe it was the opposite. I think it was the opposite. But as much as I am creating internal happiness within myself, how am I supposed to get further in life without friends? One of my friends I've known for 7 years, and I feel like I'm losing her. I feel like we're all changing, but where the hell are my people? Superficial conversations don't satisfy me anymore. Where are the people that are working on themselves too? It's like all of us are hiding, and I wish girls were more vocal about it. I also live in a big city. Sometimes I feel like escaping to a small town. You also mentioned how bad some people must have it being in college and not having any childhood friends. I totally agree. But even childhood friends are straying. What are your thoughts on this? I feel confused. Not looking for a solution necessarily, but just for another perspective on it. Okay. Alright, well, you're not looking for a solution, but Daddy knows all the answers. The twink is a wealth of knowledge for women, children, anybody who seeks the fountain of truth. So, you're getting an answer. That's what you're getting. I'll solve all of it right now. Yeah, I went to community college too, and it's like, it's not a social, they call it community college, that's like, it's ironic, that's what it's called, because it's so different from high school or normal university. Like, I was shocked when I went there, just like, I didn't make any friends. I went there for like a whole ass year. Barely met anybody. And I made friends in other environments, so I would like to think I wasn't just being a weirdo. Like, it was that place. You just go there, go to class, there are some partners, and then you just, like, go home. It's like this, it's like people just want to go and then get the hell out. There's nothing really going on. And that's what I saw with most people. Like, you see some people in groups, but the majority of people walking around community college are just by themselves. Whereas, you know, you see people in high school, like, they're walking around in groups and stuff. Yeah. And also, I feel like people might be weirded out that this is a girl, because a lot of my audience are guys, and I will be honest, I'm biased, obviously, but I think, you know, dudes do face the brunt of these like atomization loneliness issues, because there are certain aspects of it that are kind of targeted towards men, but there are some fundamental things causing it that are just universal, you know, and women certainly aren't immune. They may be a little bit more resistant, but they're definitely not immune. And one of those things is demographics. Because when you, especially when you go to community college, like half of the people are not going to be anywhere near your age. Your class partner is going to be like some 38-year-old dude. There was like a cougar in my public speaking class. Whew. I was sitting there. Let me stop. Get her out of my head. Get out of my head. So, yeah, the demographic situation is something that's universal. I feel like I can't hammer this point home enough. People just don't understand the demographic thing. Imagine growing up and like pretty much everybody around you is your age. Like it's just so, it's so wild because this is completely different from what we grew up with as Generation Z people. But that's what the boomers had. And now since the population So that's one thing. You didn't really mention that whole thing about girls being judgmental and guys being easier to approach. I mean, I would imagine guys want to talk to you because, you know, they're just trying to fuck. The guys just like hoes. They're probably more open.
I want to talk to y'all today about one of the biggest problems I see in the world, loneliness. This is a problem that I think is getting worse and worse, and we're starting to see almost a... Should we make societal changes? Absolutely. Should we try to make more friends? Absolutely. Should we welcome other people? Absolutely. All that stuff is great. And at the same time, the problem is all of that stuff requires someone else. And so do you want to leave your happiness and contentment in life to the RNG of someone else's kindness? I think not. One of the biggest challenges that's facing the world today is a loneliness epidemic. The Surgeon General of the United States released a bulletin earlier this year about how loneliness is a crippling problem for mental health and for people across the US, and we see that all over the world. Now, the biggest problem with loneliness is that as much as you try, you may not be able to fix that by yourself. Loneliness is a problem that requires other people to do something, right? And we're seeing this all across the globe. We're seeing the loss of these things called third spaces, where people kind of go and hang out. We're also seeing a lot of people living more and more online, like me and you, which makes it hard to make new friends. And so it's becoming harder and harder to get socially connected. But there's this huge assumption, which is that social connection is required for happiness or a fulfilling life. But is that actually the case? As we turn to various forms of research on aging, as we look at people like monks who actually live arguably fulfilling lives all by themselves, can you actually be happy by yourself? And that's what we're going to dig into today. We all watch videos on the internet because we want to change. The problem is that even though we keep watching them, we don't necessarily change. I want to talk to you all about our coaching program. And if you're not interested, just jump forward 20 seconds and get straight to the video. But if you're someone who is ready to actually make change, if you want to see outcomes in 6, 8, 12 weeks, if you guys are struggling with problems like career stuff, burnout stuff, social skills, low self-esteem, if you're trying to struggle to motivate yourself to actually act, that's what we built a coaching program for. Check out the link in the description below to see how coaching can help you. And now on to the video. Let's start with the concept of a fulfilling life. So for most human beings, when we kind of think about, okay, what are we supposed to do in life? It involves relationships, right? So we're in school, we make friends, we go to birthday parties, then we're teenagers, we maybe start to date, we end up getting married, we have kids, we have a fulfilling career, then we have grandkids, and then eventually, we pass away, which is the end of life. Just because the default playbook on life involves relationships doesn't mean that you can't be happy without them. And in order to understand how to be alone by yourself, we actually have to tunnel down a little bit further into what each of these things do for us. Once we understand what having friends and what dating does for us in high school, in university, once we understand the role that children and marriage play in our lives, once we understand these things, we can start to think about how to satisfy those fundamental human needs without necessarily relying on someone else. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So in order to learn to be happy on your own, the first thing that we have to start with is understand what a human being requires in order to feel happy and fulfilled. And the challenge, once again, is that most of these things we kind of default to accomplishing through social relationships. And the three things that human beings basically need to be happy are a sense of identity. You got to figure out who you are. And once you figure out who you are, you have to build something in the world. You have to have something to show for your time on Earth. This is how you live a fulfilling life, right? You're not just hitting the fast forward button on life until you die. You do something of meaning and significance. And then the third thing that we tend to do is reflect back on the work that we've done and then sort of come to peace with the things that we succeeded in doing and the things that we didn't succeed in doing. So we know from research on, for example, Erik Erikson and stages of life that this is basically what human beings need to feel like they lived a fulfilling life. Now, the challenge, once again, is that for most of these goals, we actually default to accomplishing them through relationships. So let's start with a sense of identity. How do most of us figure out who we are? When we're teenagers, when we're young adults, we're sort of trying to find our tribe, right? So we figure out which clique we're a part of in high school. When we go to university, we sort of define ourselves. Am I an anime nerd? Am I an emo kid? Am I a frat boy? Am I a sorority girl? Am I a jock? Am I a cross-country runner? So we try to develop a sense of identity. And since human beings are social creatures, the easiest way to develop a sense of identity is through relationships with other people, right? Depending on how people treat me, I have a sense of who I am. If I get bullied a lot when I'm growing up, I will think of myself as a worthless person. If I get treated with love and respect by a romantic partner, I will think of myself as being worthy of love. And so it turns out that as social organisms, it is very easy for human beings to develop a sense of identity through relationships with other people. But if we don't have access to other people, we can still develop a sense of identity. It's just that no one sort of defaults to doing it, right? We have to sort of figure out how to develop a sense of identity on our own. So let's take a quick look at that, right? So as a teenager or young adult, the main goal that we have is to develop a sense of identity. And socially, we do that through things like friends, romantic relationships, and finding our tribe. Now the question becomes, how do we develop a sense of identity if we're a loner? So it turns out that our sense of identity, we've got pretty good research on how this actually forms. It forms from developing a narrative of emotionally salient experiences. This is how human beings form a sense of identity. Now, what does that mean? A narrative of emotionally salient experiences. So what that means is that when we think about who we are, what we do is we take moments of our life that carry emotional energy and then we string them together. And that creates our sense of identity. So if you think about the way that I sort of talk about who I am, people will ask me, okay, Dr. K, tell us about yourself. What do I say? I say, I grew up, I was bullied a lot, right? So that's an emotional experience. I went to school every day, was bullied a lot, was pushed. Every time I went to PE, people would make fun of me. It was like an absolute mess. Then I played video games, another emotionally salient experience of my life. I loved playing StarCraft. I loved actually winning at something that felt really good. Then I went to university. I failed out of college basically over the course of 2 years. Then I went to India to find myself, sort of discovered who I am, right? Which in that process of going to India was also very emotionally charged. So I was really lonely for the first 2 weeks I was there. I was crying every day. I wanted to ask my parents to send me a ticket so I could come home. I didn't know what I was doing there, but I stuck it out. So I sort of persevered internally, and then I sort of discovered a source of strength. I started believing in myself, et cetera, et cetera. Then I came back, met my wife, went to med school, trained at Harvard, all that good stuff, and then now I'm doing this, right? So if you look at the story of my life, who I am, what I identify as, it is a narrative of emotionally salient experiences. Now, if we look at people who have relationships, a lot of times those relationships automatically give us emotionally salient experiences. Oh, I met this person, we had a really toxic relationship, I finally decided to stand up to my abuser and I left in the middle of the night, and then I met this other person, I went to years of therapy, I met this other person, we got married, we had a destination wedding, it was lots of fun, we had a bachelor party, that was great, I started to have children, and that was a really meaningful moment. So this is the key thing that we don't understand, is that we assume that the relationships are required for a sense of developing identity, but that's not actually what's important. Those relationships create emotional experiences, because if we look at the emotional circuitry of our brain, half of our emotions, guilt, shame, pride, all of these emotions are social emotions. They require other people, or not require, but are usually triggered by other people. So if we want to be alone, What we need to do is have emotionally salient experiences that give us a sense of our identity, but we don't need other people. It's just other people make that easy, right? When you say, oh, I love you, and someone says, oh, I love you too, let's be together forever. That's an emotionally salient experience, but you can climb to a top of a mountain, you can be huffing and puffing, feel great about yourself, really feel like you've triumphed, and you can feel great that way. Like you can develop a sense of identity that way. So if you're someone who's struggling to discover who you are and you don't have a whole lot of relationships, my strongest recommendation to you is to do things that are emotionally charged and ideally challenge you in some way, kind of push your limits a little bit, give you an opportunity for perseverance, give you an opportunity for triumph. Just do things that matter to you. A couple of other random examples. So I think like travel works really great. Finding yourself by going like backpacking in the mountains is really